Hello again. Here we are working on section 3 of the WellBeingX program. We have Jen here and Shawnee with the emotional well-being team, and we are going to dive right in. So welcome back. This session is going to be about positive emotions. In our last session, we explored health as the foundation to our well-being. We reflected on habits around eating, moving, sleeping, and resting, and created our first rooted routine for health. Today, we'll shift our focus to the second pillar of PERMA, positive emotions. But this isn't just about happiness. We'll explore the full range of human emotions and discover how we can use them to foster a more fulfilling, resilient life. Before we begin, let's reflect on your homework from last session, your rooted routine for health. Take a moment to think about the following. What went well with your rooted routine for health? Where did you encounter challenges? What have you learned so far about the process of creating and maintaining rooted routines? What small shifts might you make to improve your rooted routine outcomes going forward? Write down your reflections in your workbook. This will set the stage for the new habit we'll create today around emotions.
In today's session, we'll dive into positive emotions and explore the roles that all emotions play in shaping our well-being. Here's what we'll As always, to assess our current state, we'll start with a reflection round on our emotional experiences. Next, we'll answer the question, what are emotions? And challenge the idea of good versus bad emotions. Then we'll explore how emotions can be viewed as data, not directives, helping us make mindful decisions instead of reacting impulsively. Finally, we'll create a rooted routine for emotion to help you cultivate emotional awareness and resilience. Remember, this is your time to care for your well-being and to reflect. So feel free to pause and jot down your thoughts as we move through today's material. Let's begin with a reflection round. Emotions play a big part in our everyday decisions, but we often don't take time to consciously reflect on how we're feeling.
When we bring awareness to our emotions, we gain power over them. Often, emotions seem to drive our actions automatically, but when we notice them and reflect on their impact, we open up space for choice. Awareness gives us the ability to notice our emotions without being controlled by them. It allows us to pause, assess, and decide how we want to respond. In doing so, we can align our actions with our values rather than reacting on autopilot. Let's take a moment to reflect now. When it comes to connecting to your emotions, what's going well? Where do you notice challenges or resistance? What are you learning about how emotions affect your actions? And based on these reflections, what might you try next? Jot down your reflections in your workbook. This exercise will help us understand how emotions are currently influencing your life and where you might want to focus more attention.
As Jay Friedman expresses in this quote, emotional intelligence underpins all that we do. Emotional intelligence is the ability to notice, name, and navigate emotions. It's about understanding how emotions affect our thoughts and behaviors and using that understanding to make informed, mindful choices. Think of emotional intelligence as a skill, one that can be developed over time. The more we practice noticing and naming our emotions, the better we become at responding to them in ways that align with our values. Now let's ask the fundamental question, what are emotions?
Take a moment in your workbook to define what emotions mean to you. How would you define an emotion? And why do you think we experience them? By reflecting on these questions, you'll start to deepen your understanding of the role emotions play in your life and how you can work with them more intentionally. Emotions are multifaceted, affecting us on several levels at once. Researchers Don and Sandra Hockenberry describe emotions as involving three distinct components: how we feel internally, how our body responds, and how we behave. For example, if you're feeling nervous before giving a presentation, you might notice racing thoughts or self-doubt, the subjective experience. Faster heartbeat or sweating, the physiological response, or avoiding eye contact or fidgeting, behavioral expression. Recognizing these layers help us better manage our emotional responses. When we can identify each of these components, we're more equipped to address our emotions in a healthy, productive way.
To break this down further, let's look at each of these three components of emotions, which are subjective experience. This is the personal, internal aspect of emotions, how we consciously feel. For instance, when something unexpected happens, one person might feel excitement while another feels anxiety. Physiological response. This is how emotions physically manifest in the body. A quickened heart rate, clammy hands, or even a lump in the throat can all be physical responses to emotions like stress or fear. Behavioral response. This is how we express our emotions to others, whether through facial expressions, body language, or actions. Take a moment to reflect. Which of these three components do you tend to notice the most when you experience an emotion? Write down your thoughts in your workbook. There's an important idea in psychology. We often think before we feel. In other words, our brain interprets a situation before we experience an emotional response. For example, if we perceive a situation as threatening, our brain registers danger, and we feel fear as a result. This reminds us that our thoughts play a crucial role in shaping our emotional experience. By becoming more aware of our thoughts, we can influence how we feel and how we choose to act.
Now, let's use a tool called the emotional waterfall to explore how emotions influence our actions. What you see on the screen is an illustration of the emotional waterfall. As you can see, the emotional waterfall consists of various elements. So, circumstances are the external event or situations that we encounter. Thoughts are our interpretations and beliefs about these circumstances. Feelings are emotions arising from our thoughts. Behaviors are the actions we take based on our feelings. And finally, results reflect the outcomes of our behaviors. The key idea is that our thoughts about circumstances, rather than the circumstances themselves, primarily drive our emotional responses and subsequent actions. By recognizing this process, individuals can learn to influence their emotional states by reframing their thoughts and interpretations of events. Take a moment now to think about a result you experienced recently that didn't go the way you wanted. What actions did you take? What feelings were driving those actions? And what thoughts were beneath those feelings? What were the objective circumstances? In your workbook, write down your answers to those prompts. This process helps us see the connection between our thoughts, feelings, and actions, giving us insight into how emotions shape our behavior.
Your thoughts have a powerful impact on your emotions, which in turn affect your actions and results. When we feel stuck or frustrated, it's often because we're caught in an emotional cycle driven by negative thoughts. But the good news is, by changing the way we think about a situation, we can change how we feel and how we act, leading to better outcomes. Let's move on to a key concept. Emotions are neither good nor bad. We often label emotions like happiness as good and emotions like anger or sadness as bad, but all emotions serve a purpose. They're signals that tell us how we're interacting with the world. Rather than thinking of emotions in terms of good or bad, it's more helpful to view them as information, clues about what's happening inside us and what we might need to address.
Let's play a quick game of true or false to challenge some common myths about emotions. I'll read a statement and you decide whether you think it's true or false. True or false, emotions are neither positive nor negative. This is true. Emotions are simply signals that provide data about our environment and internal states, guiding our responses. Research shows that labeling emotions as good or bad can lead to suppression or avoidance, whereas accepting them helps us process them effectively. True or false? The more intense an emotion, the longer it lasts. This is false. Intense emotions can actually pass quickly if we accept and process them. Studies show that emotional regulation strategies like mindfulness and acceptance help strong emotions move through more quickly, whereas suppression can make them live longer. True or false? We all experience emotions in the same way. This is also false. Our emotional experiences vary based on factors like cultural background, personal conditioning, and past experiences, meaning that emotions can manifest differently in the body and mind for each person. And lastly, true or false? All emotions are useful. This one is true. All emotions provide valuable information, whether they feel pleasant or unpleasant. They help us navigate our needs, relationships, and environments by signaling important clues about what matters to us.
Now let's reflect on the emotions you've experienced in the past 24 hours. How many different emotions can you name? How did you respond to each of them? In your workbook, write down as many emotions as you can think of that you've experienced recently. This exercise will help you become more aware of the range of emotions you feel and how they influence your behavior. All emotions are valuable, even the ones that feel uncomfortable. For example, anxiety can be a signal that we need to prepare for something important. Anger might indicate that a boundary has been crossed. Each emotion provides us with information that we can use to make better decisions. Instead of pushing away uncomfortable emotions, we can learn to accept them and use them as guides to understanding ourselves more deeply.
Positive emotions like joy, gratitude, and love play a crucial role in our well being. But beyond just making us feel good in the moment, they also broaden our minds and open us up to new possibilities. When we experience positive emotions, we become more creative, more open to new experiences, and more willing to connect with others. Positive emotions expand our world, helping us build resources like new skills, stronger relationships, and a greater sense of purpose that support us in the long run. Research from Dr. Barbara Fredrickson shows that the benefits of positive emotions don't stop after a few minutes. Positive emotions help us develop long term skills and resources that we can use later in life. For example, feeling joyful during a group project might help you build stronger teamwork skills, which you apply in future collaborations. Think of positive emotions as a way of building resources that contribute to your growth and resilience.
Positive emotions don't just help us feel good in the moment, they create a foundation for long term growth and resilience. When we feel emotions like joy, gratitude, or love, our brains open up, allowing us to be more creative, connected, and collaborative. For instance, experiencing a sense of joy during a meeting might lead you to share an innovative idea or build a stronger relationship with a colleague. These small moments add up, leading to a lasting impact on our well being. The broaden and build theory, developed by Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, shows us how positive emotions work. Firstly, positive emotions broaden our thinking, encouraging us to try new things, explore new ideas, and connect with others. As we do this, we build new resources like skills, friendships, and a deeper understanding of ourselves that we can draw on in the future. So, positive emotions like happiness, joy, and gratitude tend to expand the behaviors we're willing to try, which inevitably brings about new experiences and the discovery of new things. This, in turn, also helps us develop and enhance our skills, which makes it more likely that we'll experience positive emotions in the future. This image helps illustrate this process, showing the link between positive emotions, discoveries that come from them, the development of new skills, which leads to an overall more positive and optimistic outlook. Think of it like this. When you feel positive emotions, it's like planting seeds. Over time, those seeds grow into lasting resources that help you navigate life's challenges with more resilience.
While positive emotions help us grow, it's important to acknowledge that negative emotions also have value. Emotions like anger, guilt, or fear can serve as powerful motivators, pushing us to take action or make changes when something doesn't feel right. Dr. Todd Kashdan reminds us that emotions like anger can fuel creativity, selfishness can make us brave, and guilt can drive us to do better. The key is to balance these emotions, using them as tools without letting them overwhelm us. One of the most important skills we can develop is emotional granularity, the ability to identify and differentiate between a wide range of emotions. Most people can only name a handful of emotions like happy, sad, or angry. But by expanding our emotional vocabulary, we can become more attuned to our feelings and make better decisions about how to respond. For instance, feeling frustrated is different from feeling disappointed, and each emotion might require a different response. The more precise we can be in identifying our emotions, the more effectively we can address them.
To help us identify emotions more accurately, we can use tools like the Wheel of Emotions. This tool helps us recognize a wider range of emotions beyond the basic ones we typically think of. For example, instead of just feeling sad, you might recognize that you're feeling lonely or disappointed. In a moment, you'll see the emotion wheel on the screen. Take some time to familiarize yourself with the wheel and various emotions it details. Consider how many of these emotions you can name unprompted. What effect might this have on your thoughts, behaviors, and actions? Take a look at the wheel of emotions in your workbook and think about how many of these emotions you've experienced recently. The more specific we can be, the more insight we gain into what we're feeling and why. Susan David reminds us that instead of seeing uncomfortable emotions as inconveniences or impositions, we should ask instead what function they serve. Every emotion, especially the more intense or uncomfortable ones, is simply an experience within our brain and body to try and move us towards a valued action. So the next time you're upset, instead of resisting or agonizing over the feeling, Susan David invites you to ask yourself a simple question: what the funk?
Now, let's reflect on an uncomfortable emotion you felt in the past week. Rather than trying to avoid or suppress that emotion, ask yourself, what function might this emotion serve? What is it trying to tell me? For example, if you felt anxious, it might be a sign that you need to prepare for an upcoming challenge. Write down your reflections in your workbook. This process helps us understand the value of all emotions, even the uncomfortable ones. One of the key concepts we'll explore today is that emotions are data, not directives. This means that emotions give us valuable information about our internal state, but they don't have to dictate our actions. Just because you feel angry, for instance, doesn't mean you have to lash out. Instead, you can use that anger as a signal that something needs attention, and then choose how to respond. When we see emotions as data, we create space to make mindful, intentional choices rather than reacting impulsively.
As Dr. Susan David explains, emotions are not orders to act. They are data points that provide insight into our values, desires, and needs. When we take a moment to reflect on what our emotions are telling us, we gain the freedom to choose how to respond. For example, if you feel frustrated during a conversation, that frustration might be telling you that your boundaries are being crossed. By recognizing this, you can take a step back, reflect on what you need, and respond in a way that aligns with your values. Let's go back to the emotional waterfall exercise we did earlier. Think about a recent situation where you reacted in a way you wish you hadn't. Using the emotional waterfall model, reflect on the result of that reaction. What different action might you have preferred to take? What emotional state would you have needed to be in to choose that action? Write down your reflections in your workbook. This process helps us see how changing our emotional state can lead to better outcomes.
One of the most empowering concepts in emotional intelligence comes from Viktor Frankl, who said, between the stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and power to choose our responses. This space is where growth happens. When we're able to pause before reacting, we give ourselves the opportunity to choose a response that aligns with our values, rather than letting our emotions dictate our actions. Think back to a time when you managed to stop yourself from being hijacked by your emotions. Maybe you were able to pause, take a deep breath, and choose a response rather than acting automatically. In your workbook, write down what thoughts or actions helped you in that moment. This reflection helps us recognize the tools we already have for managing our emotions and where we might want to develop new strategies.
When we let emotions push us around or when we respond on autopilot, we often end up engaging in behaviors that don't serve us. For example, reacting with anger in a heated moment might lead to saying something you regret, damaging a relationship, or creating unnecessary stress. The goal is to develop the skill of pausing, reflecting, and responding in a way that aligns with our long term values rather than letting our emotions drive the bus. Our emotions can be powerful beacons, guiding us toward what matters most. As Dr. Susan David puts it, emotions help us identify what we care about, and they can motivate us to make positive changes. When we learn to navigate our emotions mindfully, we can use them as a compass, helping us to stay true to our values and make choices that align with the life we want to live.
Now, let's think about how you can soothe yourself when you feel hijacked by strong emotions. What strategies work best for you when you're feeling overwhelmed or emotionally triggered? If you're unsure or would like extra support in this space, we've put together a toolkit of small yet significant practices to help you slow down and soothe yourself. These practices are in three categories, including somatic practices such as breath, touch, or movement, cognitive practices, which shift the way we think, and social practices, which are about connecting with others. Note down one or two of these practices on your own existing practices that could help you slow down and choose your response when emotions run high. These practices can be as simple as this: taking deep breaths, stepping outside for fresh air, or calling a friend.
To help you slow down and respond more mindfully to emotions, we've created a Slowing Our Responses toolkit. When we can better slow down and identify our emotions in a triggering experience, we can decide what serves us best in that moment. If we choose to slow down through noticing and soothing our nervous system, we bring our brain back online to make an informed, values aligned choice. However, if we react automatically, we tend to act from a more primal fight or flight instinct, which may not result in a behavior that reflects who we want to be. Take a look at this diagram in your workbook. Can you think of a time you've been able to slow down and make an informed response? Equally, can you think about a time when an automatic reaction might have gotten you into trouble? Now think back to a recent emotional reaction you've had to a challenging situation. Using the strategies from the Slowing Our Responses toolkit, how might you have slowed down and responded differently? In your workbook, complete the emotional reaction versus response template to reflect on how you could approach similar situations in the future with more intention and calm.
Dr. Brene Brown reminds us that when we are acknowledging our emotions, we can let them guide us toward actions that align with our truest values and aspirations. Our emotions are like signals. If we listen to them and pause before reacting, we can make choices that reflect who we really want to be. This is where true growth and emotional agility come from. Now that we've explored how emotions influence our behavior, it's time to put this knowledge into action by creating a rooted routine for emotion. Remember, small habits lead to big changes over time.
As the Greek philosopher Zeno said, well being is realized by small steps, but is truly no small thing. The key is to start small, make it manageable, and celebrate each time you complete the habit. Let's create your rooted routine for emotion, which includes the four key elements. Grounded beginnings. What is an existing action or routine in your day that would naturally allow you to add a new well being habit? Think about behaviors you already do regularly. How can this moment nurture the start of your new habit? Nurturing action. What is a small, manageable action you can take right now to help foster your well being? Make sure this is an action so easy you can do it even on busy days. How will you take your first step toward growth? Thriving moment. Once you've completed your action, how can you celebrate your success, no matter how small? What will you do to acknowledge your growth? This moment of recognition will help reinforce your habit. In your workbook, write down your rooted routine for emotion. Nourishing reflection. What do you expect to feel after completing your action? How do you anticipate this practice supporting your well being? Think about any changes you hope to see in your thoughts, mood, or habits. How might this habit help you in the future?
Let's take a moment to recap what we covered today. We reflected on your current experience of emotions and how they influence your actions. We explored what are emotions, challenging the idea of good versus bad emotions. We learned how to see emotions as data, helping us make mindful, value based decisions. And finally, you created a rooted routine for emotion to help you work more effectively with your emotions. What's one key takeaway from today's session? Write it down in your workbook. Thank you for your time and engagement today. You've taken an important step in understanding your emotions and how they shape your life. Remember, emotions are valuable tools. They're here to guide you, not control you. Your homework is to put your rooted routine for emotion into practice every day. Log your experience in the rooted routine logbook and reflect on what's working and what might need adjustment. In the next session, we'll explore the pillar of engagement, including the science of strengths. I look forward to continuing this journey with you. If you have any final questions, feel free to note them down, and we'll see you in the next session.